So far, we can add new notebooks to our Notes application, but what happens now if we open one of these notebooks? So let me just press on our first table view row here, and as you can see, we're now in the prepare for segue function of our notebook table view controller. This is the table view controller that displays all of the notebooks, and we're switching between the different view controllers using segues. And very important for that is that we first of all need to know which notebook we actually press. Therefore, we get the selected notebook index path, and we're getting that by calling the self, table view, and index path for a selected row function. And if we get such an index path, what we do is, first of all, getting the selected notebook that we find in our notebook array using, again, the selected notebook's index path and its row to access the correct element, and then we're creating a new note table view controller using the segue and its destination view controller, and we cast that to a note table view controller. And a note table view controller has a notebook object property that we set to the new selected notebook. Once we did that, we have a computed property here that is called notebook object. And what this does is, as soon as this property is set, we are calling the configureView function. And this does two things. First of all, it sets the title of our navigation bar to the notebook's title, and we're also loading data using our notebook, so we're checking if we can actually get notes, and as you can see, here's our notes manager. Again, we're accessing the getNotes function, so this is something that we have to implement right now, and we also reload our table view so that we can actually see the changes, but since we do not have any notes yet, we do not really have to concern ourselves with that at the moment, because we need to implement that still. And now we are actually in our new notebook, and if we press on the plus icon here, then we get our note editor. And here we have this save icon or this save button, and this is the note view controller. And once we press the save button, we are calling the save note function. Here, we're looking at two states, actually. Either we're creating a new note, which means that the note object, which is a property of this class, is empty, so here we have our note object. And if this is empty and we did not pass along a note object when we switch to this view controller, then we definitely have to add a new note. And if we have such note object, we can update our currently available note. So this is what we have to focus on in this video. So let's switch back to our realm data model and see how we can actually work with this one-to-many relationship. As you remember from the basics, in our notebook, we have a notes object or a notes property that has, or is initialized, with a special object called list. So we have a list of notes that we can add to our notebook, and this is what we are going to do now in the Notes Manager. So let's scroll down a little bit to the addNote function, and as you can see, we receive two parameters here. We're receiving the notebook, and we're receiving a content string. So the notebook is the notebook that we want to add our note to, and the content string is the content of our note, of course. So let's first of all, again, create our realm here using the standard approach that you are very familiar with by now. And now we are creating a note object, initializing that with note, using a note, giving it a creation date, using a date object, using the note again, and its content property, and assigning our content string. That's all there is to it. And now we can create a do try block again. So what we try is using the realm write transaction here, using our notebook, using the notes property, and append the note object that we have just created. And with that, we have leveraged the power of this one-to-many relationship from our notebook to the notes, and we can now catch a possible error here using print and the error object and the localized description. So this is how we really add a new note to a notebook. But now, how about updating the note? This is not very difficult as well. As you can see, we have our update note function here that receives two parameters again. We have the note object that we'd like to update, and we have the content string again, which is our new content for the note. So again, we need our realm object, so try realm and use that together with a do try statement here. Try realm creating a write transaction, taking a note object, taking its content, and set it to the new content. And this is the cool thing about this being live objects, that we can manipulate right away without having to worry about anything, just putting them into such a write transaction log. Let's now catch our possible error here using a catch block, and using the print statement, the error object, and its localized description. So this is now our update note function, also very simple, and the last thing that we really need to do, and I actually want to cut this here and paste it above delete note, is to implement our getNotes function. And as you can see, this receives the notebook object, because we associate our notes with a notebook, and this means that we need a notebook to actually get all of its notes. And we're returning these notes as an array of note objects. Again, this is my preference here. When it comes to working with table views, you could also use the results from the realm object or from the realm results object. And to get all of these notes, all I need to do is getting a notes object here from my notebook and its notes, and since we do not have to write anything to a realm, we also do not need our realm object here, and all I really need to do is returning my notes, but not as a list. I'm again using the map function and transform them into an array of note objects simply by passing the $0 object here, which is each element from my notes list put into an array of note objects. So with that done, I can run my application in the simulator, again, and since I cleaned that, I also have to create one new notebook here. So let's quickly do that here with a new notebook, create that, here we go. Pressing on the notebook, here we have still the breakpoints, so I'm skipping them right now, and now clicking on my plus icon here, creating my first note, hitting save, going back, and here we are in our first note, and we can also open that up, so very cool. And dealing with this note object is very similar to what we already did with the notebook object. So if we have a look at the note view controller, as you can see, we have our note object here, and if we have a note object, so if it is not equal to nil, then we're taking the content from this note object and we populate the note text view that we have here. This is this whole area here, and if we do not have a note object, so if this is equal to nil, then we do not change the content of our text view here that still has this basic implementation here of this standard placeholder text from Xcode. Then we change the title to new note, and we keep the standard placeholder text and do not change anything here. So this is how we work with one-to-many relationships, in the context of our application. This is how it can update, create, and also get notes into our user interface.